everyone. Aradia from the future here, about a month into the future, to be more exact. I wanted to insert this little segment to let you know about some changes that you may already suspect are coming, and let you in on a little more detail of what to expect in the future. As you know, Patrick chose to leave the podcast unexpectedly this summer. Though this has been a tough transition for you all and for Seth, it has also been an opportunity for me to move farther into the business of making this podcast, literally. As this year comes to a close, I find myself in the very surprising position of becoming a business partner in Farm, a project that I used to just be a fan of. When I found this podcast while shelving books at my university student library job, I had no idea I would one day be an integral part of producing it. But here we are. Seth has taught me everything I know about podcast production. I have been accumulating more and more responsibilities behind the scenes, and now I'm ready to take advantage of this new branch in my path. Honestly, it almost feels like Taviran twisting. So, what does this mean for our relationship? Me to you, the audience. Well, for starters, it means that I am now going to be being paid by you rather than paying alongside you into the Patreon. So that's a trip, just to get started with. It also means you are going to be hearing a lot more from me as a regular co-host of the episodes, rather than just a frequent guest. I may even occasionally kick Seth out and take over an episode or two with a different guest. You never know. You have already been enjoying my episode descriptions in your podcast apps and my artistic choices on social media when I advertise the fact that a new episode is live. For the past few months, I've been doing that, so that won't change. You've already been enjoying that, or not. If you have any suggestions for how I can make the descriptions better, particularly the descriptions of the images, I'm all ears. Another thing that will be changing is that you should be able to expect a more consistent pace of episode content releases and new Patreon goals, as Seth and I work out our shared strengths, weaknesses, and overall abilities to accelerate the growth of the podcast. We are both very excited to explore this new chapter in the podcast's life and to prepare for the inevitable arrival of the Amazon show that you just know we're gonna have things to say about. I am humbled and honored by the opportunity to join the production team of this podcast that has made such a profound difference in all of our lives. When I first wrote to Seth and Patrick in 2017 to correct them on some minor detail and share a proud picture of my Watt tattoo, I had no idea the depths of friendships or nerdly conversations and rabbit holes that I would get to explore. When I joined the Discord server and there were only 15 people on it, I had no idea that I would end up helping build it into the 1,000-person plus community that it is today. Full of people that I would fly halfway around the world to meet. Some of them have flown halfway around the world to meet me. Like, wow, was I not expecting that. I take the responsibility of producing this podcast very, very seriously. For all that I love to have fun with it. I genuinely value your opinions, and I will endeavor always to earn your respect as we explore our feelings about this epic series together. It is truly overwhelming to contemplate the profound depth of what this moment means for me. And I thank Seth, Patrick, Timber, the Pattern, and all of you for trusting me with this project. Together, we will continue to enjoy exploring the Wheel of Time for years and years to come. Thank you for listening. Now, back to your regularly scheduled content from a month ago.
This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
The room I'm in currently has yet to be given all the love. My system for recording has not yet been fully moved in and given the upgrades that I've been promised from my stepdad, who's downgrading his studio.
Well, do you want to pour some red wax over this bitch?
Yes. Let's get hot and deadly.
little white cloak torture, eh?
Yeah, just a smidge. Well, it's more of an intimidation tactic than torture. The torture comes later. This is just a tease. This is
titillation, one might say.
Quite. This is another setup chapter. And quite a bit of titillation.
Yeah, so this is chapter 31, Red Wax. Our symbol is the sunburst of the Children of the Light. And this is the chapter where Morgaise signs over all of her rights to Pedron Nial.
Yeah, this is the bizarre, thwarted Dark Friend plot rescue that convinces Morgaise that Nial is devious, where Nial is not being devious, which is hilarious.
Right, this is very much, in my opinion, a coincidence-driven chapter, not a devious plot by anybody.
Yeah, I'm very curious to hash that out when we get to the actual text of that. This is also the chapter in which Valda is recruited into the coup against Nial, I noticed. This is specifically when he gets recruited, and the coup is already underway, but this is when Valda comes back and becomes part of it. And there's a bunch of stuff about Nial that I don't understand in this chapter, but...
Well, then I think we can make some progress. I'll go ahead and read us in.
All right.
Oh, and the red wax is, of course, the seal
that
Morgaise...
And also the red wax on the messages coming out of Terabon.
The sound of the black gelding's hooves was all but swallowed in the noise of Amador as Eamon Valda rode slowly through the crowded streets. Sweat oozed from his every pore, the more for his perfectly polished mail and breastplate, gleaming despite a layer of dust, and the snowy cloak spread over the gelding's powerful rump. Yet it might have been a fine spring day for all the notice he took. He did his best to ignore the dirty men and women, even children, with lost expressions and travel-worn clothes. Even here. For once in his life, the great stone walls of the Fortress of Light, towered and bannered and impregnable, bastion of truth and right, did not lift his spirits. Dismounting in the main courtyard, he tossed his reins to a child with graded instructions for caring for the animal. The man knew what to do, of course, but Valda wanted to snap at something. White-cloaked men scurried everywhere in a great show of energy, despite the heat. He hoped there was something more than show behind it. Young Dane Bornhold came trotting across the courtyard, pressing fist to mailed chest in an eager salute. "The light illuminune, Lord Captain. You had a good ride from Tarvalon, yes?" His eyes were bloodshot, and a smell of brandy wafted from him. There was no excuse for drinking during the day. So I'll leave it there. I remember early on in the podcast pointing out that Bornhold was, totally anti-booze until his father died, and he, slowly descended into alcoholism.
Mm-hmm.
Was it Bornhold, or was it,
Carradine.
Carradine.
I would think that Dane probably made a comment to the same effect, but I think Carradine is the one that makes the more dramatic shift from teetotaler to slobbering drunk.
But we've seen him descend. He's really, even having just done Fire in the Ways, where, remember there's that whole thing where Bornhold is drinking and...
Oh, yeah, Galad takes it away and throws it over the edge. And...
Exactly,
yeah. No, you're right. This is him closer to the beginning of the slide towards that.
Exactly. Yeah, well, I mean, he's sliding pretty hard right now. Drinking in the middle of the day, not a good sign.
Yeah, this is the inflection point at the top of the slide where it's and you're fucked. Yep, you're fucked now. That thing.
And we can see Valda is kind of pissed that he got called back, right? He thought that he was going after the White Tower, and he was ready to just crush them. But Pedron Nial has other ideas. He's playing the game of houses, whereas Valda loves the charge. He wants to attack straightforward. He wants to just go up against the White Tower.
His entire idea of strategy is the charge. Yeah.
And he wants to charge against the White Tower. He thinks that now they're split, he can just push them over the edge, which is, by the way, ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't think that... I mean, the Aes Sedai never talk about being anxious about the White Cloaks. They never factor into the political machinations we see between the sisters. Valda is so full of shit.
Right. Worst case scenario, they pick off a lonely Aes Sedai who's, like, by herself, and they're able to, like, crossbolt her when she's not paying attention.
Right, or they're able to, like, bribe a few of the tower guards to, like, not be tower guards.
Or they hang an Emerald Seat who's already dead.
Right. And then brag about it for the next 600 years.
Right. Like, that's literally your greatest accomplishment, is hanging someone, digging up a corpse and hanging it. Congratulations, assholes.
Mm-hmm.
You are the most worthless. Like, I know Pedron Nial is considered one of the great generals, but he hasn't. What has he taken? You know, he fought against the Aiel and did well.
He's got
but in the
like
last 20 years,
banners from foes that he defeated, but he hasn't done that in the last like 15, 20 years, right? He had a very, very decorated campaign career decades ago. But
it's almost like you have an aging, older, aristocratic group of people who aren't willing to let go of power, and even though they're not good at what they do anymore, they're keeping themselves at the head of power.
Yeah, it's kind of like they figured that because it worked decades ago, it will continue to work decades from now, and there's no need to change in response to new information or a changing landscape.
And even though he's willing to change according to new information, he makes so many assumptions based on his history. That's really what, in my opinion, drives Niall's defeat, is that he is unable to accept that the last battle is actually coming.
Yeah, he trusts his own judgment to a fault on that. He's like, I know what's going to happen. And it's like, he's really good at assessing the fact that, like, you don't always know all the information, but he doesn't quite have enough humility to realize that he might be totally off base, like, with his fundamental assumptions.
Exactly. His fundamental assumptions are wrong, and then he makes really logical, really totally good conclusions, assuming his presumptions are correct, and they're not.
And he never once considers that his base assumptions are wrong. That's his fatal flaw, I think.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that.
This passage that you read, and then what comes up next, really gives us an idea for who Valda is.
Yes.
And he is not a dark friend, but he is the worst kind, the worst expression, the worst extremes of what humanity can be.
Kill them all and let God sort it out.
Mm-hmm. He is in it for his own ego. He is in it for having fun. I mean, as far as he was concerned, the Wanderers were added plums on the cake. He doesn't care to kill, but he doesn't mind getting off on killing when it's that much of a thing. Like, he doesn't need to kill Morgaise, but he's going to enjoy killing her if he needs to kill her. Like,
right, and if there are innocents and guilty mixed together, he is all about, just kill them all.
Oh my god, that paragraph, I just marked it all out because it's like, he's not satisfied because it doesn't kill enough people, right? That's why it's not a satisfactory solution.
Yeah, he's bloodthirsty. And he's representing the Shadar Logoth version of evil.
He is very much the kind of person who would have driven Aradhol at the beginning, right? And it's his line here about how it's hard to fight people who can blend into the refugees makes me think of, like, many of the wars that have been fought since RJ was
the Middle
a soldier,
East,
where it's like, all of the population is enemy combatants, and the fucked up things that does to people's heads when that is the terrain. And Valda is not the kind of person to worry over things like guilt and innocence, like most people. You know, he's a very, very terribly singular kind of person, right? Most
Valda is the kind of person
like Valda
in Vietnam who goes, I love the smell of napalm in the morning. Like, that sort of just like, nuke them all, don't care, burn the forest down, burn the villages down. They're harboring terrorists or commies or whatever you want to call them, Charlie, and just kill them all. And that's...
And victim blaming.
It gets it done. It gets it done.
The innocent should have stayed in their homes. Like,
yeah, they should have. Right.
Oof.
The kind of person who decides killing kids is fine because they'll grow up to be the enemy.
Yeah.
For what they might do in
But
the future.
Valda is categorically not a dark friend.
No.
He is categorically never considered being a dark friend. He considers himself on the side of light after his own self, but, like, he is not affiliated with the Dark.
And, you know, I feel like I'm just quoting phrases here, but the path to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah.
Like, Valda believes he's doing good things, and he's being one of the most evil motherfuckers to ever cross the... Because he's just indiscriminately killing people. Even Pedron Fane doesn't indiscriminately kill people all that often.
I think Pedron Fane and Valda kill people about the same rate.
Sure.
Because neither of them is a seeking it out sadist, right?
Yeah, but I would say, like, Fane kills for a purpose, right? Like, he often kills to, like, he killed Perrin's family to make Perrin suffer. He killed, you know, like...
he killed Perrin's family because they insulted him.
Well, yeah.
And I mean, like, he can co-opt people's minds and souls, right? He can practice his skills. I feel like Valda kills people who are in his way, but he doesn't go out of his way to kill people, right? Whereas, like, the Prophet, right? Massima's expression of insanity. Again, Massima's not a dark friend. Massima, like, will actually, like, find targets, right? And go after them. He's an interesting in-between of Fane and Valda.
Part of the reason he goes after people is he goes after people who oppose his power as the Prophet.
Mm-hmm.
That he's using the dragon as this, like, obey the dragon, and I get to say what the dragon says, so obey me.
Right.
And I feel like Massima goes after anyone who's going to threaten his power. A queen, a king.
Yeah. It's interesting that Valda and the Prophet are so diametrically opposed to each other. Like, this whole setup has to do with their conflict, because they are not.
That's true, yeah. They're about to fight.
Valda is one of those people that makes you really, like, shudder at the state of humanity, right? Because he's not twisted by some metaphorical evil. He's just the kind of person that you hear about in war documentaries.
And this also sets up that time when after Pedron Nial dies, which Valda, we're going to see him set that up, but Valda takes Morgaise into custody, and he does some truly awful things to her.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing him think about that ahead of time. And this is foreshadowing for, like, it's like, Morgaise, get out while you can. Get out. Like, he's coming for you. Like, this is bad. He thinks, you know, if he had Morgaise, she would sign that treaty the first day if somebody had to guide her hand to hold the pen.
Yeah, and I mean, more or less, that's what happens. I mean, granted, she signs before Valda gets his hands on her, but nonetheless, he still uses that approach to create control over her agency, which is disgusting and terrible and horrifying and very well written, because you mostly don't see it on screen. Very well constructed.
So what do you think? Here, Valda had not thought much of Geoffrey Bornhold. The man had been soft. I think that's ridiculous. Like, do you remember Bornhold when he was talking to Perrin? He was not a soft man.
Oh, yeah. Bornhold's very hard. But Bornhold, more than Valda, cared about the light, right? Valda pays lip service to the light. Bornhold actually believed in the light. I don't think Valda believes in anything, really. But Bornhold thought that he was justified in a more holy way.
Right.
And so I can see where Valda, as a self-aggrandizing zealot, would see that as a weakness.
Yeah, it's weird, because he believes in the light, but he believes in the light when it serves him, not...
Yeah, it's a little b belief.
Yeah.
I think Geo-Fram was big, capital B belief. But it's also interesting how there's the whole... Valda wondered what had happened. Dane had been such a fine young officer. Like, he's following after his father, caring about things like guilt and innocence and drink.
Well, and Dane's an alcoholic just because of his father's death? Is that really what's driving him to be an alcoholic? It seems like that's what's...
I don't think it's just that. I think that Fane's influence and the Two Rivers campaign had a lot to do with it. I think that he was in a really, really shitty place because of his father's death, and then what happened in the Two Rivers happened.
We also think Bayar was compelled by Grendel, right?
No. Bayar, not Bornhold. Yes.
Not Bornhold, yeah.
Bayar was compelled by Bornhold.
Under compulsion. And Bayar was whispering in Bornhold's ear for a long time.
Right, so that cognitive dissonance, right, that... I can attest. Cognitive dissonance will drive one to drink.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I'm sure you don't. So yeah, I think that it's not just his father, but it's everything that's happened since his father died, right? His father dying marks the watershed moment for everything sucking super hard. And he's never really had a chance to heal, right? All he's had is people telling him that he needs to have a vendetta against Perrin for killing his father, or he needs to go around killing people that seem innocent but are being ordered to be killed by some incredibly corrupt leaders, right? It's not a good way to avoid alcoholism.
Yeah, you have to assume there's some form of guilt there.
I mean, we see that in Fire in the Ways, right? The way that he breaks down and ultimately dies definitely speaks to conflict on the inside.
Which is not how he dies in the series, by the way.
Correct.
We get to see him die twice, which is because we see him die in Fire in the Ways. That's one of the reasons why.
He dies in the books? Bornhald dies in the books? I thought he killed Balwer and then lived.
Damn it! No, he's alive. I'm sorry.
He is? Okay.
You're right.
Okay. Whew.
Bayar is the one we see die two different ways.
How does Bayar die in Fire in the Ways?
He runs.
I thought that
Doesn't
was
he
Bornhald.
run off?
I thought Bornhald ran into the wind.
Oh,
because it's after he killed Bayar.
Because that's after he killed Bayar.
Okay,
That's right.
okay.
All right. I'm getting their two deaths confused.
I have no idea why that would happen. It's not like their names are remotely similar.
And it's not like they're both White Cloaks who both hate Perrin.
And who both give a whole bunch of shits about how Geofram the Elder died.
Right. It's the same thing with Asunawa and Eamon Valda. I get them confused a lot because they're almost always in the same scenes and their goals are very similar, even though Asunawa is the questioner and Valda's not.
There's a couple of pairs of Aes Sedai who I have the worst time keeping separate. Because, yeah, it's the scene, the name, and yet the totally different motivations. It's like, God damn it.
Alright, so which one lives and which one dies? Adelitas and Vandene.
No. Shit. Adelias is the one that lives. Until she dies later. Adelias.
Metal Deterra disagrees with you.
God damn it. I can never keep it straight.
Alright, and which one's green? And which one is brown?
Vandene is green. Adelias is brown.
I think that's correct.
Adelias claims I should have chosen green.
So Super Skylake says Vandene is green, because that rhymes.
And then the green one had the warder and didn't die. Right, because he runs into the house on Blue Moon Street first. Vandene is green. The green one had the warder. Therefore, she's the one to die.
And the one with the warder wouldn't have been the one who was killed, or else we would have found out about it, right? Remember, she was like...
Okay, I might possibly be able to work with that. Vandene is green.
Thank you, Super Skylake.
Super Skylake. Hat tip.
So, back to one of the ways to try and keep Eamon Valda straight from Asunawa is this. Valda thinks the questioners, although they do good work, torturing, he could never escape the feeling they had donned the crook, because that way they would never have to face an armed foe.
Yes, that is such a creepy line and an excellent mnemonic.
It's a mnemonic?
Well, not really a mnemonic, but a way to remember.
No, yeah.
Stretching the definition of mnemonic really far.
Yeah. But yes, this idea that the only reason, like, you get delivered prisoners and you get to torture them and you never have to face anybody. You never have to face a charge. You're never in the field. You get to go sleep in your own bed. Like, frankly, being a questioner sounds kind of nice.
If one is inclined that way, yeah.
I mean, they're the introverts of the White Cloaks, you know?
The introverts of the White Cloaks.
Listen, it's just me, my torture chamber, my podcasts. I just, it's... Hell, that's half the torture is I just make them listen to my podcast while I'm cutting them up. Like, that's... Most of them are like, please play some music, polka or something. I'm like, nope.
Like Vogue on poetry. Okay. I'm cool. I'm cool. I don't know why I think that's so funny. I do think that's one of the few moments in which you get confirmation that Valda is not a dark friend because you're at the first time you come through this, right, you don't know if he's a dark friend or not. This is, I think, one of the things where you get the indication that he's not, because dark friends tend to be cowards and like that, and the fact that he is disgusted by the lack of bravery is like, okay, you're the other kind of evil.
Yeah, you're the kind of evil that just can't discriminate between people and things.
Like, I don't exactly respect him for it, but it is a mark in his favor with respect to the dark friend question, if you're in doubt. David is artisanal evil. Yes.
Bespoke evil.
Evil in a fancy font.
It's organic evil.
Organic free-range evil. Non-GMO. No antibiotics.
Listen, Agador made sure that everything was GMO. All the evil, the Trollocs, the Fades, they are GMO evil by far.
Yeah, it's true. But here in Portlandia, the darkest timeline, we have free-range, non-GMO, naturally bred Trolloc-ish things.
Oh yeah, I think I was at a bar with one of those last year. They're just assholes. Most of them are from California. I think we're stretching that metaphor way too far.
Yeah. Editing. We love you. So, I think we should next talk about how the Dome of Truth is an architectural wonder that only zealots get to see.
Oh, please expand on that. I skipped right over it.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting. He has a comment here. He spends a whole paragraph describing the Dome of Truth and how it actually is epic enough to restore his sense of self and all of that. And it's a dome that stretches 100 paces across unsupported and rose 50 to its peak. And then farther down, it was a sight worth seeing, though none but the children ever did, of course.
I mean, so that's basically a hemisphere, right?
It sounds like that's what I'm envisioning.
It's a radius of 50 feet, both height and from the center to the end of the edges. Yeah,
you've got R and R2, or R2 and R, respectively, technically.
Right. And one of those is 100 and one of them's 50.
Mm-hmm. So it's a hemisphere. It's an entire unsupported hemisphere. And
well, it does have a ring of columns on the outside, supporting it up to a certain space.
It rings the chamber, but the dome itself is unsupported.
Oh, okay.
That's the way he describes it. And yeah, I agree with you, Tabernus, in Discord. It reminds me of the Sistine Chapel or some other fancy domed thing with Michelangelo fucking paintings inside. It's like that, but yeah, like you said, if only the priests get to see it. If only like the most devout, if only the clergy gets to go into the Vatican.
Doesn't Niall describe the sun and the floor being made out of pure gold, and like they've walked across it so many times they've like worn a rivet in the gold?
It wears away. I think that's in the audience chamber for the Lord Captain, whereas this is their like ceremonial, like this is the hall of the tower with the Amerlin seat room in it kind of thing, versus like just the main meeting room. But I think it's interesting that they have this massive architectural wonder that, like, I don't know how they built it given their level of mistrust of technology and innovation, but they have it, and the only people who ever see it are themselves. It's not open for tours. It's not a tourist trap.
Valda walks over to Asunawa, who's studying the painting of the Amerlin they hanged. We talked about her earlier.
693 years ago.
Congratulations. Jesus Christ. It might as well be the Confederate flag. It's like, great, you kind of won. Not really. You lost.
I want to talk about things that have lasted longer than the Confederacy.
Right.
So I wanted to ask, 693 years ago, justice had been done according to the law. Whose law? This is not a sarcastic question. Literally, whose law?
Oh, the law of the White Cloaks. Didn't they have that book from the founder,
Lothair Mantelar?
Yeah, and I don't think the law that was the law, but that was the founding document, and then they went on to be and when they possessed Amador and basically became the ruling group in Amador, they had these laws passed that
I just do not understand the entitlement of I made up a law in my country and therefore I have the right to impose it on everyone everywhere. I don't get that kind of entitlement.
Have you really not been paying attention to the American elections?
The fact that I have really elevated blood pressure would indicate that I've been working on this question very actively. It's this kind of thing makes me see red and feel dizzy when I think about it too long.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's just like
the imposition of a moral code upon someone who is not in your country. Yeah,
get your morality out of my personal bubble. And like, it's bizarre to me that the White Cloaks have been around for how many centuries with all these other nations, and like, when did they even get founded? Where the hell does their founding fit? Because they feel like some bizarre cult that like Arthur Hawkwing would have set up in his later Paramount.
That I was going to say, it feels like a post-Arthur Hawkwing thing, where this was the idea, of course, planted by Ishmael, that the Aes Sedai were evil and that you needed to rebel against them. Like, I don't see it as a direct line, but I see it as sort of an inheritance of that sort of war against the Aes Sedai that Arthur Hawkwing started.
Feels like the same kind of rationale for the xenophobia, right?
Yeah, they were founded during the War of 100 Years, which was after Arthur Hawkwing.
Is that the war to try to hold together provisional governments after he died? Is that what the War of the 100 Years was?
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, I definitely think that he, Lothair, something, whoever it was that founded the White Cloaks, I'm guessing that he was an acolyte of some school of thought that was very hardcore about Hawkwing's approach. And then, for whatever reason, that cult was extra popular.
Lothair Mantillaire, which is almost Mantir, but not.
Okay, Mantillaire.
Lothair Mantillaire seems to be an allusion to Martin Luther, father of the Protestant Reformation.
Oh.
Mantillaire believed that the chaos of the Civil War to seize control of Arthur Hawkwing. This is all from the Watt Wiki. The chaos of the Civil War to seize control of Arthur Hawkwing's empire was allowing the shadow to gain root and flourish among the people. He outlined his vision of simple, humble lives that people should lead in the name of the light in a book called The Way of the Light, which gained some popularity during those dark times. Although its assertion that touching the true source was a providence of the Creator alone, and that any who dared wield the one power were servants of the Dark One, including all Aes Sedai, was controversial. He founded them in FY 1021, which is 21 years after, basically, the war.
Okay, that fits.
Presumably long after his death, the group had formally become a military order dedicated to the destruction of Dark Friends and also the Aes Sedai.
So he never meant for it to be a religious order the way it evolved into, per se.
Not exactly, but the idea that Aes Sedai are evil and the Creator is the only one who should be able to touch the one power is founded in his documents.
But the idea of being an independent military force running around enforcing that with violence is maybe slightly more iterations down the road than what he thought of.
That's a couple more. Yeah.
All right.
But yeah, it all happened in the chaos following Arthur Hawkwing when everything was falling apart.
Which, again, like, that would have been the kind of period in which religious faith and zealotry and holding together to something would help people survive as an empire collapses, right?
Well, and this is one of those places where the Wheel of Time universe doesn't really have a religion. The closest we get to is the White Cloaks, which, as we said, his name sort of goes along with Luther.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Martin Luther.
Yeah.
And so, it seems that the White Cloaks are religious zealots without actually having a religion.
Right. They have faith in something.
And that's where, like, the religion of the Wheel of Time world is much more tangible. Like, there is the one power. There is magic.
Mm-hmm.
And they are actually actively against it. So...
Right. They're not against a bogeyman. They're against a very real, tangible force in the world.
Exactly. And at the same time, they're just impotent against it.
I know. It's like, don't you guys think that maybe you need to invest in, I don't know, like, magic engineering or something in order to, like, fight fire with fire?
But they have the Creator on their side. The Creator will never let them down.
The Creator that also made the one power and made people able to touch it.
See, this is where, you and I don't really get religious zealots.
No, I find zealotry a fascinating but entirely unrelatable phenomenon.
I'm right there with you. So, Asunawa and Valda, who are we talking about? Asunawa and Valda sit down and are basically like, dude, what the hell is Nial doing? He's had Morgaise in his possession for a while, and this is a problem. He is treating her like an equal rather than a servant, and that cannot pass.
Yeah, this conversation reminds me a lot of when Elaida approaches Alviarin about the coup in the tower. This is that same kind of Asunawa is coming to Valda saying, so I have a lot of really disturbing feelings about our leader, and I would like your help in doing something about it.
Yeah, I want to change things.
Because they are treating certain personalities on the world stage in ways I strongly disagree with.
And we know this ends up leading to them manipulating Asunawa, or Omirna into assassinating Nial, and then...
Yeah, so... That's what's interesting is there's a line on the next page where Nial says Omirna was becoming more useless every day for some reason. So I think that Asunawa was already laying the groundwork for the coup at this point. And
definitely.
He had Omirna, kind of getting everything set, sort of setting the stage to lull Nial. And then he's like, okay, Valda's back. I gotta make my move on Valda, because if Valda's on board, this plot can move forward a lot faster. That's what I think is going on there.
Yeah, although Valda does play Omirna a little bit. There's definitely a period of time where he's like, I think the assassination is a little premature, and Valda does it specifically when Omirna doesn't have his troops around in order to take control.
Because there's definitely a moment when Asunawa...
Oh, sorry, Asunawa, not Omirna, yeah.
Yeah, Omirna was always going to die. That was
yes.
that was
always. Oh yeah.
But yeah, there's definitely Valda plays 4-dimensional chess to what Asunawa is trying to do, and Omirna is just a complete cannon fodder casualty, red shirt in the middle of all that.
Right. But I do believe that Valda outplays Asunawa just in timing.
Agreed. Totally agreed. Because they are playing against each other, right? They're like, oh, I need you as an ally for this coup, but which of us is going to be on top at the end is very much still in doubt, and I'm going to play layers within layers to try to make that happen. And I mean, that's the conflict that Galad ends up resolving ultimately, both by killing Valda and then later by having Asunawa get assassinated by his own troops for being a douche.
Valda is very much a child, whereas Asunawa is very much a questioner. Aside, above, outside of the children. The questioners essentially get uprooted by Galad and eliminated.
They get incorporated, or assimilated. He has a very Perrin-like success with adding the questioners into the rest of the Legion. Which makes sense because he's under Perrin.
Right. So. But basically what we're looking at is this sort of, which one of these two factions is going to come out on top? The children or the questioners? Which one is going to be in charge of the Children of the Light? The military aspect or the torture aspect?
Right, exactly. Right, and it's, both of them are zealots. Both of them are not dark friends. Both of them are incredibly dangerous to all of our heroes for subtly different ways. Like, I'm really glad that Galad comes in. I'm really glad that Galad chose to become a White Cloak.
Me too.
Because it means that he's able to turn the White Cloaks around from the Valda-Asunawa dichotomy.
I still think the head of the White Cloaks and the head of the White Tower would have been a great couple, though.
Which segues excellently into a point that I noticed. The White Tower calls their initiate's daughter. Mm-hmm. The White Cloaks call their initiate's son.
Very similar sort of structure.
It's like, RJ, could you be less subtle, RJ? Please? Could you be slightly less subtle? I don't think I'm getting what you're putting down right now.
Sometimes when this stuff is so very obvious, and I'm just like, he is sometimes head-slappingly obvious. And I get why, like, occasionally he would get questions, and he'd be like, it's obvious. It's in the book. Read it. And, like, yes, as we go through here, chapter by chapter, we are figuring that out, but, like, in hindsight, as intelligent people, I don't know how he expected people to figure this out ahead of time, but it is in there, and in some cases like this, head-slappingly obvious.
It's beautiful in and of itself, and it supports the headcanon that Egwene and Galad were supposed to happen.
Because then you have daughters and sons.
Mm-hmm. From the two white people getting
Right.
together. Wait a second. That's
No. Well, at least they've got a fair amount of, he's got some military power and she's got some power in, the one power. And so together...
And political
power. So together they, it's a white power couple.
God, they would... Yeah, that doesn't sound good.
You really have to be careful where you put the comma on that one, because if it's a white power couple or if it's a white power couple, those are very different things.
Yeah. At the end, when Asunawa walks away from this little meeting, some of the children bow deeply as he passes. I bet those are the ones that are in on some level of the conspiracy.
Sure. Yeah. They want him to lead the charge, and they're like, why do we have this Aes Sedai trained woman here and haven't tortured her into submission? We don't get it.
And there's drinking during the day in the tower, or in the compound, whatever.
I gotta wonder, is Pedron Nial slipping? Is he just maybe a little senile?
Well, I hadn't quite considered if he's senile, but everything about his plot, particularly in this chapter, is very unexplained and irrelevant to the larger plot. And it makes me feel like, yeah, he's maybe getting a bit lost in the weeds of whatever the end stage of his career as a military commander is, and his inability to come to terms with what the last battle is going to be. Because nothing that he does ever comes back to bite our heroes in the ass.
No,
we never meet Pfizer or Veridin or any of these people that he is so worried about the messages and the plots. None of that ever comes up to create a problem for our heroes.
No. I mean, best you can say is that, this puts the White Cloak army in Perrin's path.
Which, there's a lot of ways for that to happen, with Perrin's arc being what it is.
And also somehow gets Morgaise into his path, but two very different ways.
It's hard to... I hadn't thought of senility as being an explanation, because he does seem sharp, and I don't think Balwer would really tolerate operating under a senile master, but there's definitely a loss of touch that is why he both never has a major impact on the plot and why he doesn't see the assassination attempt coming from a mile away.
Right, and we see Omirna, he gives the tube to Balwer instead of to Niall, and he should know better. That's clear disrespect, just giving it to the secretary, because he doesn't want to be there.
Right, and he dismisses Valda as a minor irritant. He dismisses Omirna as incompetent. He's just lost in the weeds of his own plans or something.
Yeah, he's I kind of think of him as that guy who's playing chess in this, and gets so obsessed with the game that he doesn't realize it starts to snow and freezes to death. He's so obsessed with the game that he misses the conditions around him that are deadly.
Yeah, he's just way too lost in his own navel of plotting.
And so we saw him get this message from Veridin in Tenchiko where he dismissed it, and so he sent Phares. I always call him Fraser, even though there's no R.
Uh-huh.
Phaser.
Yeah, it's Phaser. Yeah,
but I always think of him as So he confirms the rumors, and so Niall's like, "Oh man, there's actually is something going on in Tenchiko."
Right, but the trick here is that Veridin and Phaser shouldn't know about each other.
Yeah,
and this message says they do.
I never figured that out.
That's what distracts him and gets him all why he barely notices Morgaise when she comes in later, because he's thinking about the letter he sent out in response to this unexpected revelation.
Any idea how they found each other?
Nope. It's just there's so much that RJ builds here and then never follows up on. I mean, I'm going to assume that somewhere between the Shan Chan Dark Friend plots and just regular human weakness in the face of impossible odds, somehow something happened. Basically coincidence. But because it doesn't matter ever, it never comes back to mess up with Matt and Tuon or with Rand and hunting down Grandal. Grandal never even deals with this. There's nothing about this that ever matters.
I'm nodding.
It's hilarious to me how much energy RJ puts into building this elaborate piece of nothing. It's
and then
like
just
a
throws
false
it away.
front
Yeah.
on a building in the Old West. It's just like, it's the front, but there's no building behind it. I think that Niall's trying to like gain territory in Tarabon and all this stuff, but like it never goes anywhere.
And he sends a response, but there's no need for a return. Like, what does he tell them to do? I don't know.
Yeah, I just have triple question mark noted in my book. Like, there would be no need for a return. Like, what the fuck? You are sending someone on a suicide mission? Is that what you're doing? Like, how is this that important to you? And yet we never see the fallout from it elsewhere in the series.
It's like the letter never makes it.
Probably, yeah. It probably, honestly, he gets killed by a boy with a stick trying to, like, eat a horse for his family or something, you know? Like, it probably is a completely inglorious way to lose the message. I agree with you, Melodatura. It is kind of wonderful and lovable about the series that they think they're so important and yet they are so irrelevant. But it's also frustrating because I'm trying to podcast all the details out of these, and RJ is not helping me out.
Things are moving so fast that he's operating on a timeline of armies that take months to march across countries, whereas like gateways have changed everything, and he gets so carried away by the speed of I don't know. I feel like he's missing something about the modern warfare.
Well, I mean, the White Cloaks are already out of date inherently because they don't have any way to deal with the power as a weapon. But because Aes Sedai don't use the power as a weapon, it's sort of at a balance. And then the Shan chants show up.
Right. And the Ashaman.
Well, even before the Ashaman, this is just the Shan chant, and he can't come to terms with the realities of people who have weaponized channeling. He thinks that it's some sort of reveal of the Aes Sedai having always been lying this whole time. He's not taking into account that there's a whole other army out there with weaponized channelers. Because he's smart, but he's not that creative.
I do think that he says he gets this feeling. So he's got these 4 rules. Never make a plan without knowing as much as you can of the enemy. Never be afraid to change your plan when you receive new information. Never believe you know everything, and never wait to know everything. And all of that makes a lot of sense, right? Like, and in a lot of ways, I think he's waiting too long. I think he's not following those rules. But then we see this line here where it says, the only reason he managed to withdraw without being crushed was a feeling, and he felt that tickling again. And I have to assume that tickling is somehow a connection to being murdered and Omirna and paying attention.
I think so. Because Omirna is suddenly not as useful as he was for some reason, right? Like the clues are starting to stack up, right? See that with Swan, right? Like she, in hindsight, is like, oh, there's a couple of clues that people weren't quite working for me. Like, I think that he's putting those battle instincts together, but he thinks that he's feeling that tickling around this grand political machination around dealing with Althor and dealing with Tarabon, and he's attributing it to the wrong thing. He's breaking one of his own rules. He believes he knows everything.
Oh, right. Yes, definitely.
He's not humble enough.
Do you think that tickling could be because he could learn how to channel?
No.
All right. Just gonna throw that out there and get shot down right away. Fine.
No, Iturralda has a similar list when Sanderson writes him, and he's defending the town in the Borderlands. What's the name? It's not Malden. Crap. The town where he makes that big long last stand with Brandon Sanderson, and you keep cutting back there and thinking that they should be dead, and they're not dead yet. That whole sequence, Iturralda has a very similar list, and in his conclusion, he's like, my instincts have been screaming to me that I needed to leave 3 days ago. And I know that I'm a dead man because of that. Meridon, thank you, Tibernus, is Meridon. Iturralda has a very similar thought process and feeling, and again, I don't see any evidence for channeling. I think it's just when you have survived enough deadly situations, your spidey senses are more acute.
It's like great general sense. It's like what makes
basically.
Yeah. Like you get like +1 to perception or something like that. Like you're just a great general, and you
just get a +7 to all perception rolls.
Yeah. All right, so let's switch to
Morgaise.
This next Morgaise.
Talonvor's very, very accurate instincts.
Yes, and I think that also Linny has the same instincts, right? So they're both talking about Paitr, And Talonvor says, I don't trust him. And Lenny says, he reminds me of that young undergroom just before you went to the White Tower, the one who got 2 maids with child and was caught trying to sneak away from the manor with a sack full of your mother's plate.
Mm-hmm. Small potatoes, dark friend, but definitely untrustworthy through and through.
And remember, Paitr is the guy who Rand breaks his nose. He's the dark friend who's attracted to Matt's dagger.
Yes. Yeah, and I looked up Torwin Barshaw, his so-called uncle, bona fide dark friend.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Just in case there was any doubt about how incredibly lucky Morgaise was to not get rescued by these guys.
To sense the dagger, you can't just be a dark friend. You have to be deep in the dark friend stuff. You are not just, like, dabbling.
You think? Really?
Oh, yeah.
I thought that it was that, like... Yeah, no, my own argument actually agrees with you. So, yeah, that means that Paitr, for all that he looks like a quivering youth that's full of excitement and all of these, like...
I bet he's done some really awful things.
Oh, he's just a kid that got caught up with a bad gang and it's sad. Like, no, he's actually, like, probably murdered children and kicked puppies and all of that.
And that's why the whole, when we get to it, they said they were discovered doing dark rites. I 100% believe that that's what they were discovered doing.
Really? You just think it was straight up some dark catechism involving kicking a puppy?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say it right out. I think the White Cloaks found some dark friends. Legitimately, they just found some dark friends doing a dark ritual.
You never really see dark rituals done, but I suppose the Forsaken give us enough clues to let us know that maybe there could be such things.
And also, like, they are about to free Morgaise, so they're getting ready to free Morgaise, and they're summoning a Fade or, trying to do something for the Dark One because they're trying to gather power to get Morgaise out.
See, I always thought, as I was doing my notes for this, I sort of figured that maybe it was a final meeting for the plot to get Morgaise out. Like, it wasn't a ritual, it was just a planning meeting for the conspiracy.
Maybe.
And the White Cloaks, being the Inquisitors that they are, they blew it, or the Spanish Inquisition mock-ups that they blew it up into a dark ritual involving, horrible, scary things. But at the same time, like, Pavara's family was killed in an uprising of Dark Friends.
Right.
So, creepy, satanic rituals of evilness are on the table, canonically.
I'm there with you. And that's...
I'd like to think that it's less glamorous and it was just a meeting, but at the same time, like, there's some appeal to it actually being a broken clock is right twice a day kind of raid on Dark Friends. I can get down with that. I can nod to that.
And also, so we get here, Pater's uncle, they look different. I don't think they're actually related. I think they're just both dark friends. Yeah.
Agreed. Probably, like, it's like his handler or something, right? Like the person who brought him into the heart of the dark friend group or something like that. Yeah, I agree.
And he apparently expected some sort of reward for his uncle for his past, some sort of failure back home. And I think that's all about Rand and Matt. And
absolutely. And
so
he almost dances when she agrees to it. I bet that he was under threat of death.
Absolutely.
Fix it, fix this, or we kill you for that.
Yeah, you need to make up for this somehow.
I wanted to point out that Linny is rolling a ball of blue yarn from a skein that Brienne held stretched on her hands. So first of all, blue yarn, I don't know if that's relevant, but she's working on turning recently purchased yarn into a skein in preparation for knitting. That's the guise that Barshaw came on, was to deliver knitting needles and yarn. So Barshaw came to tell them about the scheme to how to get them out. And he did that under the guise of delivering these knitting supplies.
Gotcha.
And you see Linny and Brienne actually interacting with the knitting supplies as you do. Like, I don't know if you've ever knitted, but, like, you have to get the... Okay, so when you get yarn, it comes in these big figure eights.
Okay.
And you can't pull the yarn out of them forever before you end up with them shrinking in on themselves and turning into a knot. So you make your life much easier by winding them into a ball first. And it's much easier done with two people, where one person holds the figure eight on their hands and the other person spins off of it and turns it into a ball. I did it a lot in elementary school because hippies. But it's this funny little detail because the two women are in the background messing around with the knitting supplies that the Dark Friend brought as subterfuge for being able to convince Morgaise of the apparently not Dark Friend plot to get her out. It's just all the details. They all fit. I love it.
It's fractal. It's fractal.
Yeah, I don't think that the fact that it's blue yarn actually means anything in this case, but it could.
It could.
It could.
So she goes over this plan that obviously never happens because Paitr gets killed, so I don't really think we need to go over the details of it.
And it's mostly a bunch of her micromanaging everyone around her because she's afraid of losing control because she's a queen on the run.
And she's pretty much already lost control, as it is.
Yeah, she's a control freak. It's a queen thing.
So Ainur Serin is this questioner who gets sent to fetch her. And as far as I can tell, he is just wrong place, wrong time boy. He just happened to be... Yeah. No?
He's second in command to Jacob Carradine.
Yeah, that's true. He could be a dark.
He is the one who met with Bornhald the Elder on Alma's Plain.
Wait, what?
And gave him the heebie-jeebies. Yeah. Ainur Serin. Okay, in The Great Hunt, when they meet up, when Bornhald is given instructions to meet up with White Cloaks on Almath Plain, and they meet up, and he's like, ugh, questioners, it's so disgusting. Blah, 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 blah. It's Serin who's in charge.
Do you think he's a dark friend then? Or do you think he's just a questioner?
I think he's a dark friend. I looked him up and there is not canon evidence. According to the companion, it doesn't say either way. But I believe that a person who is second in command to Jacob Carradine and was given the command of questioners who were hiding as not White Cloaks making chaos in Terabon, and who is also coincidentally integral to this little piece of theater Morgaise is about to experience, I find it really hard to think he's wrong place, wrong time. I think he's a dark friend.
But Nial sent him to fetch Morgaise, not Carradine.
I don't have everything about this scene worked out, but I think that the evidence otherwise still supports it, that there's no way Carradine would have a second in command who was not also a dark friend.
And I'm not disagreeing that he's a dark friend. All I'm saying is, I don't think him being set to fetch Morgaise was in the dark friend plan. I think that was just entirely, he happened to be with Carradine, he happened to be with Nial. Nial was like, go get Morgaise for me.
Okay, yes, I will buy that. But he is involved in the capturing of these dark friends also. And I find it very hard to believe that that's a pure coincidence. He says at the end that he checked to make sure that nobody thought to ask if any of the dark friends had a connection to Morgaise. All of that information, the entire story about them getting arrested and about how there's definitely no connection to her, that is entirely on his word, and I just find that really convenient.
But he's thinking that to himself. He's not trying to fool anybody. He's just like, huh.
He says that out loud to Asunawa at the end of the chapter, and it's circumstantial, but I feel like it strains credulity that this is pure coincidence, even though I think it's mostly coincidence. What I think I'm saying is that I think that the plot to get Morgaise out being foiled, he was involved somehow in making sure that plot got foiled. I don't think he was involved in exactly what Niall was doing. I think that was a coincidence. But he's deeply involved in the underlying setup, if you know what I mean.
Whereas I completely disagree. I completely think it was a coincidence. So I'm going to jump to the end of this chapter. Last page. Asunawa drummed his fingers on the arm of the chair. Above his head, the shepherd's crook, blah, blah, blah. The witch was taken aback, he murmured. Serin answered as though it was an accusation. Some people are affected that way by hanging. The Dark Friends were rounded up yesterday. I'm told they were chanting some catechism to the shadow when Trom broke down the door. I checked, but no one thought to ask if they had any connection to her. And, that's just, he's totally like, oh, I was told they were chanting something,
I think that he was tipped off, I think he was told by Dark Friend channels to go deal with that group, to foil that plot. And he's slipping information into the data stream such that he's completely extra insulated. It's a feeling. It's a feeling.
Niall sent me to fetch her as if I was a dog. He's pissed. He's pissed he got sent to fetch her. That was in no way planned.
No, I don't think that him escorting her was planned. I don't think that that was relevant. I think that he was involved in making sure that that plot didn't come to fruition, not showing it off to her. I don't think that was necessary.
So you think he was involved in the plot to make sure that Morgaise didn't escape?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like someone who knew about it, because it's all dark friends, right?
Yeah, but dark friends don't always talk to each other. I think
they don't. But like the puppet master at the top, right, is playing both sides of the board, kind of thing. It's very tenuous, but Saren is so central to so many different things that I just look at him sideways.
But we never get anything, like, we never get a follow-up. We never get his fate. He never, he doesn't show up again. It's not like this is the last time we ever see him. He's never in another chapter again.
It's true. All right, audience, we are expecting you to vote on the Instagram post associated with this episode. Who's right on this? Is my conspiracy theory made of stuff and nonsense and necess logic sound, or am I completely onto something and he's too much of an empiricist?
I think this is a case of White Cloaks. I'm going to give my final argument. White Cloaks captured Dark Friends, legitimately, randomly captured Dark Friends, because they were doing a satanic ritual, and they're idiots. As we know, Paitr is a goddamn idiot, and so, they did it in a way that was very obvious. They got caught. They got hanged. Saren, coincidentally, was sent to fetch her, and because he's this, no-nonsense weird dude, he went on the shortest route, including, I'm guessing he showed her the hangings to unnerve her, but didn't know there was any sort of connection.
All right.
So that's what I'm saying. Whereas you think there's definitely some sort of, he was sent to stop
some sort of back door complicated House of Cards nonsense. Hand wave your own details as necessary, but I think there's something to it.
And I think the hand waving your own details is exactly why there's not something to it.
Yeah, so let your votes be known on the Instagram post associated with this episode, guys. Do it.
Yeah, let Aradia know that I'm right.
I will accept the popular opinion.
So let's talk a little bit about Morgaise, because this is technically her POV.
Oh man, this is some peak Morgaise, honestly. I love her in this. She said about flogging down the butterflies. I'm like, Elaine! I can see Elaine in you! This is what I love about Elaine. This is that strength. You're seeing the mother-daughter. I think it's great. This is why we love the Tricans. Also why we hate them, but why we love them. So stubborn. So fucking brave.
One thing I wanted to point out is she is constantly telling herself that if only the White Tower was trustworthy, she wouldn't have to go to the White Cloaks. And remember the reason that she thinks the White Tower isn't trustworthy? Because she's been compelled by Ravine.
Agreed. 100% agreed.
I think when Elaine dismisses the idea that Morgaise would ever go to the White Cloaks, she doesn't realize her mind has been messed with by compulsion. And that compulsion is forcing her to turn away from her only legitimate allies in the White Tower.
And I think that it's like the compulsion that Morgaise puts on Liandrin to not kill herself, where it persists because it's what Liandrin wants anyway.
Right.
Right? Morgaise has always had a slightly contentious relationship with the Tower, with being raised-ish and with having Elida.
I think anyone who's a novice in the Tower has a slightly contentious
Yeah, exactly. And then she had Elida as her advisor for all those years, and the mistrust and the looking over your shoulder was there. So Ravin didn't have to do much to make her permanently incapable of trusting the Aes Sedai. I absolutely agree. This is 100% why Elaine doesn't predict her actions correctly.
Can we agree, though, that Niall has no idea that Morgaise has been convinced by the death of her rescuers? He has no... whether or not Asunawa or Caradin or anyone else was involved, Niall has no idea.
Oh my god, this reminds me of Rand and Kyrian accidentally playing the Game of Houses so much.
Exactly.
It's the same thing.
Niall's she's pretending surprise. She had not tried to escape. She was a guest. She had wished she could see him on the, she is so shocked that he's just pretending that he didn't outplay her, because he didn't outplay her. He has no idea why she's conceding now.
She respects his intellect and his game so much that she's like, oh, Niall's just too subtle to rub my face in it. you guys have gotten so ephemeral in your game that this is Rand and Kyrian all over again.
Yeah, they outplayed each other in the game of houses. They were they were going around in circles so much that she basically outplayed herself.
Yeah, she just defeated herself. She completely defeated herself because she has this unrequited, unresolved love thing around Talonvor that makes her just use this cognitive dissonance to just sell out in ways that make no sense in hindsight.
Yeah, I mean, we get another line here. She could not make herself trust the tower. Could in italics. Could not, because compulsion.
Yeah, she's in an extremely tight spot because she is both compulsed and incredibly stubborn. The two things make for very, very complicated holes to get out of.
And then she turns over her rule to Pedron Nial, which again, we never, this is like, there's no, does Valda just not realize that he has this in his possession after he kills Niall? Like, is this just like a hidden document somewhere?
I don't know, honestly. Now that I think about it, because Valda tortures her and then rapes her.
Valda,
I don't know why. If he knew that this document existed, why would he need to continue getting her to agree to things?
That's a good question, yeah.
Which implies that Balwer maybe makes that document disappear.
Possibly. I could see that.
The difference in time between when Valda kills Niall and when Balwer gets Morgaise out is very short.
Right, because he is killed in the prologue to the next book.
And Balwer immediately starts figuring out how to get Morgaise out, and then the Seanchan let him accelerate his plan.
Right.
But as soon as Niall dies, Balwer is working to take Morgaise away from Valda. So I bet that document is never seen by Valda because Balwer keeps it under wraps.
But yeah, I was like, when is the next time we go back to this basically group of people, and it's the prologue for A Crown of Swords. So it's interesting that we actually take quite a break from this tower. And I'm not really sure how much time passes between now and then.
Between now and when the assassination happens.
Right. It can't be that long.
No, because if the Seanchan, if the Hylene has hit in Tarabon, it's not that many weeks until they make their attack on Amadisia.
And I think it's not that far away from, I mean, I think we're only a couple of weeks from the end of this book anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's coming up real soon in book time.
I just want to go back and just point out that she is going to pull the same crap that Elaine and other queens of Andor have pulled. If she ever asks her people to die for her, she'll pick up a sword too.
Yeah.
That's a nice foreshadowing for Elaine wielding a sword while pregnant. It's again that, like, you see the mother-daughter resemblance.
Right,
there.
right. And that is the Legend of Andor. Like, that is what the queens of Andor are expected to do.
That's the line that Anna has in the video. That is the kind of courage expected from the queens of Andor.
Exactly. Yeah. It's almost less to do with mother-daughter and more like they both have the headstrong stubbornness of the...
Yeah, you're seeing the nurture part of the nature-nurture, right? Like, this is the attitude that Morgaise grew up with. This is what she imparted to Elaine. Like, the commitment is real. And I just love that. She's like, I will order my soldiers to put us all on a suicide mission, and I will die with a sword in my hand if it comes to that. Like, you go, girl. That's the way to do it. I just want to point out Balwer, his surprise when she signs and Niall doesn't respond. Balwer and Morgaise have this almost bonding moment of just pure surprise that I think foreshadows the way he gets her out and protects her secrets in later books.
Well, and because Pedron Nial is distracted by the message from Tarabon, he realizes that, like, this is real, and he had actually we see there was nothing there except pen and ink, a sand in a bowl, and freshly burned down stub of sealing wax, as if he had very recently written a letter.
That one-way courier.
Yeah. Which we weren't, again, not sure what the hell he said there.
And it never seems to matter, but it distracts him from responding to her capitulation, which then gives her time, an unexpected gift not to be wasted. And then she immediately pivots from, I wish I could see you on a gallows, to, hey,
let's play stones.
Stones? And, she's, like, leaning forward and, like, smiling. Right. And, like, we see it, when we come back to this plot he's like, yeah, if I was 30 years younger, I'd be playing to your real game.
Right.
And like, this is the beginning of that, which I think indicates, if I recall correctly, she reflects on weeks playing stones with him.
Yes.
So that gives us a little bit of a timeline, because she wouldn't start playing stones with him until this conversation has happened.
Yeah, I actually thought they had been playing stones before this.
Yeah, no, this is when that starts. Well, this is when she offers to play stones, obviously, not when they actually play. And she's thinking about how she has to make sure that she provides an interesting game, but she really hates losing. Doesn't want to lose.
Yeah, and this is where Niall is limited by real-time communication. Even though he gets this thing signed, it still takes him weeks, if not months, to gather his forces to make a move.
Right. Even if he wasn't reshuffling his plans in light of the new news, it still would take weeks. But because he's reshuffling his plans, he's now like, oh, that's going to be months and months. And
right,
Morgaise
exactly.
is like, you just made me do the most serious transgression of Andorran sovereignty ever, and it's going to take you months? What? Yeah, that's the tyranny of distance. It's brutal. And then, yeah, there's that section we already went over with Asunawa and Saren. I want to point out that Trom gets mentioned in that passage. I think this is the first time Trom gets pointed out. And Trom is, of course, a guy who's actually a pretty decent guy with Galad later on.
Oh, of course.
Naturally. I mean,
Obviously.
I'm surprised you didn't remember, obviously.
Yeah. By inspection.
He's such a memorable character.
Oh, he dies.
Trom dies?
Yeah. Trom would die later participating in Queen Elaine and Davram Bashir's battle against the Shadow forces north of the city of Kyran. He was found by Galad, and his cloak was almost completely red with blood, save for his officer's knot, which Galad took.
Trom was a good dude, as White Cloaks go.
Niall sent me to fetch her as if I were a dog, Saren grated. I almost spewed up my stomach standing so close to a witch. My hands wanted her throat. Asunawa did not bother to respond. He hardly heard. Of course, Niall hated the hand. Most men hated what they feared. No, his mind was on Morgaise. She was not weak, by all accounts. She had certainly fended off Niall well enough. Most people would have collapsed as soon as they were inside the fortress. She would ruin some of his plans if she turned out to be weak after all. He had all the details in his mind. Each day of her trial, with ambassadors on hand from every land that could still produce one, until finally her dramatic confession, wrung from her so skillfully, no one would ever find a mark, and then the ceremonies surrounding her execution, a special gallows just for her, to be preserved afterwards to mark the occasion. Let us hope she continues to resist Niall, he said, with a smile some would call mild and pious. Even Niall's patience could not last forever. Eventually, he would have to hand her to justice.
Oh, that's creepy.
Yeah, it's fun to read creepy voices.
Oh, God. Yeah, Asunawa is... Oof. You did good with that. I'm very creeped out.
Yeah, that was the goal. It is 6:30 on the dot.
Playing
That's
like
what I'm talking
adults. You reminded me like 3 times in the upcoming 4 days before this. Like, remember, this is happening.
That's not true. I reminded you once a couple of days ago, because it had been a couple of weeks since we've sat down and recorded.
I forgot so hardcore.
Oh,
yeah. Such an important reminder.
I figured you would add, because it's been weeks, and you have moved, which I want to hear all about on
yes.
recording.
It's super legit, and yes, I definitely need reminders. As much as I try to be organized, time is very wibbly-wobbly for a wide variety of reasons.
I actually switched to a whiteboard calendar on the wall. That's been helping a little bit. But yeah, it's all been timey-wimey. So you say you were talking a little bit about this before the recording, but you said you just moved into your new house, and it's been 3-ish weeks.
Yeah. So yeah, I moved, guys. I no longer live in student housing in the Willamette Valley. I now live in a house in the Coast Range. And
super exciting.
Oh, it's so gorgeous. I'm surrounded by trees and creeks, and I have guest rooms, and my sewing room isn't in my office, and the kitchen has an island, and it's just, oh, the porch. It's such a huge porch. The major downside is that the well water is extremely sulfurous, and it also wasn't maintained for like the last couple of years, and so it simply fixing the deferred maintenance has made it much less. Oh yeah,
I bet. Do you use like an extra Brita filter on top of that?
Yes, we also have one of those on our filter on our tap that helps. And we're going to put in an aeration system, so a little bit of chemistry there. If you break the surface tension of the water, then the hydrogen sulfide gas will escape, and then the water isn't nasty, and you didn't actually have to like add chemicals or anything to it. You just played with physics. So we're going to add one of those, like an aerator, in the well.
Does that acidify the water at all? Because you're bubbling CO2 through it?
You're not bubbling CO2 through it. You're literally just running it through itself, but you're forcing it to break surface tension, and that lets the ions get out of the water.
Oh, so you're not pumping air through it. You're pumping more water through it?
Yeah. You're just dripping the water back onto itself. You shove a little intake tube near the surface of the well, and then it draws the water up and drops it back down, and that's just enough to make this extremely sulfurous air come wafting away from the well.
When I lived in Houston, we swam in this outdoor pool, and in the winter it was heated, but in the summer, the temperature would be 100 degrees, and so the water would get hot, and they had these aerators similar where they just have these pipes, and they were just PVC pipes. They'd pump water through with holes in them, and they'd spray out in this big arc. And it was sort of similar, but except it was with chlorine, because they chlorinate the pool water, but you get this like intense smell of chlorine coming off because it was breaking up the surface and allowing it to evaporate super fast.
Exactly the same kind of thing. So that's pretty fun, but it doesn't stick to your skin or your clothes or your dishes like at all. It's just while the water's there. So it's not that bad, and like it's natural. It's mine. It's my problem. It's my stinky well water, So yeah, it's just absolutely fabulous. The room I'm in currently has yet to be given all the love. My system for recording has not yet been fully moved in and given the upgrades that I've been promised from my stepdad, who's downgrading his studio. But yeah, he's no longer going to be playing live shows out, so there's a whole lot of gear he's just never going to need again. Yeah, I'm just I have my like foam board on the wall in front of me to try to soak up some sound, but I don't have that much. And yeah, I'm just on my USB like secondary mic. I'm not even on the good mic right now, because I don't have anywhere for the mic stand to be attached to yet.
Gotcha.
But I figured, you probably have been so starved for my voice that you'd take anything, even a USB mic.
I tell you what, I have been. It's been I love talking to all the guests who come on. They're so much fun, but I've definitely missed talking to Aradia. So that like, it's the difference between going on a first date and like being in a relationship.
Yeah, rapport it's an investment.
It is.
It really, really is. For sure.
It's great talking to you.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm so glad to have you back on the podcast. So
yeah, I feel like it's been forever.
Well, I knew you were moving, so I recorded I scheduled a bunch of people to take up slots.
Which I appreciate. Thanks everyone who did that.
I'm hoping in the future we can have more, and threesomes is not the right way to say that, but
the three-way also sounds a little bit.
Yeah, there's not really a good way to say three people on the podcast at the same time.
Triplet? I don't know. That's not right. I don't know. A triumvirate?
A trilogy, yes.
A trilogy, yes. A trilogy of hosts. Yeah, what are groups of podcasters called? I'm declaring headcanon right now. A trilogy is a group of podcast hosts, whether or not there's three.
Only if they're talking about books.
Right, yes. Book casters, for sure.
So I was going to say, I can come up with other names for a group of podcasters, but, they're not necessarily polite to say on air. Certainly things I've been called in the past.
Oh boy. I did read, I finished The Left Hand of Darkness the other day. That was trippy.
Is that the Sephiril's hand?
No, this is a much older book from Ursula K. Le Guin.
Oh, Ursula K. Okay.
It was published in the 60s, I think.
Yeah. Now I know. Once you said that, I was like, oh yeah, I have read that.
Yeah, I'd never read it before. So I got the audiobook and I finished that over the weekend. And I missed a lot of it because I kept listening to it like while I was moving. And so like I'd miss chunks, right? Because I was like in the cabinetry or whatever. But yeah, I finished that and that was an absolute trip. I'm definitely going to have to listen to it again. It was a very interesting concept, for sure. And it was definitely a more believable version of a faster than, or a near light speed travel society than I really have usually seen. The mechanism that sort of sets that up was very believable, and I guess there's a whole universe of books, or there's a whole bunch of books in that universe that aren't really connected by plot, but are set in that universe, so I'm interested to read more of those, because I want to see how that society works. That's really cool.
I guess I've only really read the Ursula K. Le Guin that was like assigned in school, and I suppose I really need to go back and do a deep dive into her stuff, because I know it's really good. But I always think of it as school reading.
Yeah, I've only ever read a short story before this.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I would recommend the one book I've read, and I keep being told to read more, so yeah.
Yeah, maybe I will have to do it. I've been reading, or I've been listening to yesterday something called the Bobaverse. Which is, it's a sci-fi about a 20th century dude who gets frozen, right, when he dies, and then wakes up a couple of centuries later, but they can't save his body, so they put him in, basically duplicate his mind into a machine, and they put him into a von Neumann spacecraft, which is essentially a spacecraft designed to replicate itself.
Oh.
And so they send him out with the ability to also duplicate the artificial intelligence that he is.
Oh, wow.
And so it's this 20th century dude named Bob who loves Star Trek, who gets to go out as an artificial intelligence and essentially like explore the universe.
Oh shit.
And so it's got a lot of really funny, it's like got a lot of Star Trek references, and it's just, it's a funny pop culture. It's very light. It's very sort of easy sci-fi, and I think the first book was like free on Amazon, which is what got me into it, and then the fourth one just came out. So I'm listening to the fourth one, and the fourth one is he's exploring a megastructure around a star, which is like, as far as I can tell, a bunch of tube segments orbiting the star, one inside the other, and the sun is the center tube. And then there's it gets complicated, but there's this, they built an artificial structure around the star,
like a Dyson sphere kind of thing.
Kinda, but it's more like Halo, like a ring world.
Okay, gotcha,
more of a ring world, but fully enclosed.
Okay, yeah, like in the time shift.
Yeah, and it doesn't use the sun for light. It like provides its own power for sunlight. And the inhabitants appear to be sort of an otter-like humanoid creature.
Oh, that sounds terrifying.
Yeah. And what he does is he creates basically an android. He scans them, creates an android, and then because he's an artificial intelligence, he just inhabits the android and goes and like hangs out with various alien species.
He's a 20th century dude named Bob.
And at this point, because he's a von Neumann machine, which their goal is to go out in the universe and duplicate. And basically create settlements and places where people can come behind them and settle. I think there's like a couple of thousand different versions of Bob out in the universe now. Gotcha. Yeah. and then there's a whole, they're getting, but one of the things he's starting to explore is identity and what is, if you've got 1,000 copies, generational drift where a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy tends to like actually not be all that much like the original Bob. And just recently they started talking about quantum stuff where it's like they figured out that if you duplicate a Bob, whichever one wakes up first doesn't have the drift, and whichever one wakes up second does, even if they're separated by more than light. So it's very much quantum entanglement type things. So it's obviously, it's not hard sci-fi. It's fun, light sci-fi, but it's got some interesting concepts in it. And it's just perfect for a nerd, because it's like basically if a nerd of my age was frozen and woke up in the future and was born into a robot, what would I do? Because he tells, like, all the same bad Star Trek pun jokes that, and, like, as they duplicate, all the different Bobs take custom names based on generally pop culture. So there's, like, Homer and there's Riker.
Oh, that does sound fun.
Yeah, it's just a fun.
Light and fluffy.
Exactly. No, it's a good, light, fluffy distraction from the...
Anything.
Yeah. I'm super excited about your new place, and to have you, like, there's something very satisfying about having your own place and being able to nest.
Oh my god, and like, the people who were here before, the dude was apparently very good about keeping out the blackberries, and he only died like 3 years ago, so the blackberries really haven't gotten in that much, but they're trying, and I was out there, like, with my audiobook in my ears and my clippers, just, like, carefully wreaking havoc on where the blackberries were trying to get in across the property line. It was so satisfying. Like...
Nice.
This is my land, and I get to manage it. And, like, a tiny little bit of English ivy, just an itty little bit of English ivy, I ripped it up with so much glee. Like, die.
And isn't there something satisfying about the physicalness of getting that work done, too?
Mm-hmm. And, like, that's how I memorized Wheel of Time, was by working on cutting down blackberries at a different piece of property in this watershed.
Mm.
That's literally, like, where the bulk of my memorization of Wheel of Time comes from. It's...
Because you were listening?
And I didn't have the ability to do that for the last 6.5 years, you know? I just didn't. There was no way to get my rose gardening gloves and my clippers and go do that. And I have acres to manage now. Literal acres.
I'm so jealous.
So happy. Oh my god. You have got to come visit. Oh my god. Just wait till I get like a futon mattress to like put in the actual guest bedroom. Oh my god. I actually have a room we can put guests in. What a concept.
I can bring my own air mattress.
You will love this place.
You know I will.
Timber will love this place.
Oh my god, yeah.
It's so freaking gorgeous and quiet and dark and cool and rainy and just everything that I hated about the Willamette Valley is gone again from my life.
You're making me look at, like, after all you're talking about this, I've been like, land. Where can I look at, like,
Dude, there's a lot of land out there where it has the site, the zoning and the site for a house, but you'd have to build it. You could totally pull a trailer out there, get a power drop. It's not that unreasonable.
Internet?
It's getting better out here, actually. Where we are obviously has really good internet. That's part of why we got this place, is because it has good internet. But all up and down the highway that connects the valley to the coast out here, they've been doing a big fiber optic cable install. We've been watching it go down all summer.
Nice.
And the company that we're going through, their whole shtick is rural connectivity, and they keep sending us promo about how they're like expanding their service area. So over the next 5-10 years, I expect to see a massive increase in the availability of internet out here, for sure. Despite all the steep canyons and all of that, like they're really getting between Starlink and fiber optic cable is coming.
Right. Because that's one of my biggest problems where my parents are. Is like, I'd love to go be in that area because they've got land and stuff, but their internet is so bad.
Yeah.
Like, even plugged in, it's atrocious.
Yeah, that was our big limiting concern moving out here, but this one spot has the cables, so...
Nice.
Yeah, we've got it DSL, like, we're like 300 feet away from the substation or something like that, so it's pretty dope.
So, is there anything outside, you got all this property and this acreage, where is civilization? How far away? And, like, where do you get food?
So we're gonna have to drive to either a town on the coast that's like 30 minutes away or go into the valley like 40 minutes away. There's technically a little tiny store at the end of the drive that has reasonably expensive beer and milk and bread. Our driveway actually is an easement on to their property. So
gotcha.
We can literally, and they have a bar also, so we could literally go down to the bar and then walk home and never actually go onto public property.
Nice.
Technically. But that's, a very, very tiny little convenience store. So to really, go to Winco or something, it's going to be like a 40 or 30 minute drive depending on which town we go to. But, go every 2 weeks or even every week, like, you can also make you run to the hardware store for all of the fasteners you still need, and like that. So civilization's a ways away.
That's just going to be like a Saturday chore to get up and go to civilization and stock up.
Exactly. But that was already how we treated going to civilization, even when it was just outside.
Fair enough, yeah. I mean, these days, definitely.
It just adds a commute.
Which, hey, great time to listen to some Wheel of Time audiobooks.
I really, really wish that Brandon was into podcasts or audiobooks or anything, but he doesn't enjoy the distraction of that constant spoken word thing while he's driving.
Gotcha.
Like, me talking to him, fine, but listening to something recorded, not fine. And, since he's the person in charge of driving the death machine down the road at 60 miles an hour, I tend to do whatever it is he's most comfortable with.
Are you not a license holder?
I am not. I've never been a license holder, actually.
That's right. I think I remember you was talking about that.
Yeah, I find...
That's gotta be hard living in the boonies.
I mean, my grandma thinks it's gonna be hard. I honestly don't, because I have so many... Another part of the cool thing about living out here is I'm near family, and my mom is actually currently living here in her trailer. They've got their big fifth wheel pulled out and plugged in alongside the house. And between the two households, it's like, oh, if someone's going to town, do you need things? Right.
How many cars are on the property at any given time?
3. One of them is a vintage Volvo that does run. Very tiny, cute vintage Volvo. And then 2 more normal modern cars. I don't anticipate it being a problem. I might get my license at some point, but I don't think I'm a very safe driver. I find anything over about 20 miles an hour to be overwhelming, and I can't keep track of shit, and it's safer for everyone if I just don't.
I'm not going to tell you need to get in the car and drive then. So, I'm like, yeah, please stay off the road. And by the way, I am also not a great driver, and that's why I don't, I avoid it when I can. I do have a license. I have done a lot of driving, but I don't enjoy it. I don't find it to be, like you said, a 2-ton death machine going down the road. That's kind of how I feel as well.
Yeah, it's just, and in fairness, my mom didn't get her driver's license until she was 29. She didn't get her driver's license until she was 29, so I'm only a year past her. So I don't feel too bad about it.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or
support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?